President Trump, cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations. Would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
President Donald Trump has now categorized Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorists, and that's one of his nearly 200 executive orders, which he signed on Inauguration Day. And that's why you heard a reporter ask him, as he was signing that executive order, whether he intends to use US military in Mexico to fight drug cartels. Now, before we get to some of his other executive orders, and many of them had to do with the southern border and immigration, Cenk, I mean, look, I hate the cartels, I despise them, and they've caused a lot of problems, not only in their own country, in Mexico, but obviously here in the United States as well. We know that somewhere around 100,000 Americans are now dying every year from drug overdoses, fentanyl being the most dominant drug that's killing people. So I understand wanting to go after the cartels. This is gonna be a disaster. I don't know if he would actually do this, but if he is serious about doing this, it would be a disaster. I remember when Mexico got serious about fighting the drug cartels. What happened when they did that?
It got worse. So, and the drug cartels took over, and it was incredibly violent, enormously violent. It was a total disaster. So guys, this has three different parts. First is, should they kick people out of the country that committed felonies here or part of drug cartels that committed crimes?
Yes, where's the question?
Yeah, so, well, I guess for some on the left that's a question, but I think that's mental. So yes is the answer. And that one's clear and easy, and no matter what you happen to think of it, the American people believe that about 98% of them, okay?
Right.
So that one's locked in. And if he just did that, it would that would be really popular. And his numbers would go up,
right?
But he can't help himself, right? So then, and by the way, we've gotten in fights with some folks on the left because they say, no, it's all a fantasy. There are no drug cartels. They don't take over any apartments or buildings. They don't do anything wrong. There is no crime. It's all imagined. There are no cartels, and they're not here. Okay, so that's, in my mind, that's crazy talk, right? So understand that that's our perspective. Now, bucket number two, calling them terrorists. Why? Well, isn't felon, violent criminal enough? Well, why do you need to attach a new name to it?
Well, isn't the only reason why to do that to basically open up avenues to go after them militarily?
Yes, and so that's why I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So this going after using the military inside the United States, totally unacceptable, and there's no need for it. What, our cops can't arrest drug cartel gang members? Of course they can. They have great numbers in the past. And so, and the military doesn't do a better job of policing than the police does, no matter whatever you think of the failings of the police, right? So it's just, there's no need for it. And second of all, anytime we start calling people terrorists, here comes the demagoguing. So the word has no meaning. It doesn't really, it's never used consistently. It's only used against people we don't like. So it's just totally, best case scenario is totally needless. Worst case scenario used for demagoguing and military force. So the third bucket is, should we invade Mexico? Are you kidding me? Why would we attack Mexico? What kind of lunatic talk is this? And I know why Trump's doing it, Anna, real quick. He thinks keep everything on the table, right? And let me make sure that I use my leverage, and this is among my options. I get it. But it sounds mental, and it's destabilizing for the world when we threaten to invade half the countries in our hemisphere.
Look, I sympathize with people who want to take out the cartels, right? If we lived in this fantasy world where the military goes in, wipes out the cartels, guess what happens next? Even if it goes smoothly, which it won't, but even if it goes smoothly, best case scenario, there's still demand for these drugs. So as long as there's demand, there will be new people who are willing to illegally cultivate and sell these drugs.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up.
We're gonna go back to the same problem. We need to figure out, look, there needs to be a solution. This is a problem. And so he has correctly identified a legitimate problem. Again, I don't know how serious he is about using our military in Mexico to go after these cartels, but that is not the correct solution. Not only will it be destabilizing, it doesn't actually solve the root of this very serious problem.
Yeah, and it bothers me that whenever we talk about drugs, we start blaming other countries. Like they made us take the drugs. And that Oxy wasn't the #1 reason why we had this giant spike in heroin and then fentanyl. It was, and it wasn't like Mexico or China invented Oxy. We did. Our companies screwed over the American people and profited off of their deaths, as they often do. But you can't blame corporations, because corporations are gods. So everyone lies collectively in media and in politics and pretends the Mexicans did it or the Chinese did it, when the reality is that the #1 cause of this problem was American corporations.
Yeah, pharmaceutical companies incentivizing doctors to overprescribe painkillers, also misrepresenting just how addictive the painkillers were. I mean, that was really the root of the problem. In addition to look, there are a lot of Americans who are just not feeling great about their lives, right? And they're looking for ways to numb it. So this is a much more complex issue than we got to take out the cartels. Okay, again, best case scenario, even if you do, you somehow manage to like round up and kill every cartel member in Mexico, and it's not gonna go as smoothly as that. But let's say that happens, it's not gonna solve the problem because the demand is still there. Now I wanna get to some of the other executive orders that Donald Trump has signed. For instance, he has declared a national emergency at the border in order to restart construction of the border wall. And one thing you'll notice, it's like a through line with many of his executive orders. He is understanding that as president, you actually have a lot more power if you're willing to identify something as a national emergency. This was something that Democrats were urging Biden to do in order to get some of his agenda items accomplished, but he was unwilling to do it. Now, he also, again, wants to send military resources to the border. Trump said during his inaugural speech that he will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a wartime authority to deploy the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eradicate foreign gangs and criminals from the United States. So that's the executive order that Cenk was alluding to a little earlier. Keep in mind that act has only been deployed 3 times prior and during serious conflicts. So for instance, the last time that act was used was during World War II, and it was specifically utilized in order to force Japanese Americans into internment camps. Then there was the issue of birthright citizenship, which I really want to talk about, because there's no question in my mind that right now, those pushing to change birthright citizenship are hoping that this case make it to the Supreme Court. And I don't know how the Supreme Court would rule on it. So Trump has directed the US government to, or US government agencies to no longer issue citizenship documentation to babies that are born in the United States on US soil, but to parents who are undocumented, who are not American citizens. And that obviously flies in the face of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. The 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868 after the Civil War, stipulates that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are automatically citizens. So again, he wants to change this by essentially making it so you're only a US citizen if you're born in US soil to American citizen parents. More specifically, Trump is ordering the Social Security Administration to no longer recognize the babies of undocumented parents as US citizens. Let's take a look at this video.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
Yeah, that's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the courts? That one is likely to be passed.
Could be. We think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, we'll see. We think we have very good grounds.
So what he just said there is not true. We are not the only country who do birthright citizenship this way. Different countries have different policies as it pertains to birthright citizenship. Some have restricted birthright citizenship, indicating that at least one of the parents needs to be a citizen of the country. But in regard to unrestricted birthright citizenship, the United States is joined by dozens of other countries, including Canada, Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. They have unrestricted birthright citizenship like the United States does. Now, when it comes to the Supreme Court, what is the likelihood that they vote in favor of Donald Trump, because they do want this to make it to the Supreme Court. Well, the Congressional Research Service said then, this is during Trump's first term when he first floated this idea, that prevailing legal interpretations held that children of undocumented immigrants are citizens. But the service cautioned that the Supreme Court has not firmly settled the issue in the modern era. And about 4.4 million US born children under 18 were living with an undocumented parent in 2022, according to the Pew Research Center. At least 1.4 million adults have parents who are undocumented.
Okay, so this one is the sacrificial lamb. So it's meant to distract you. I'll use two different animal analogies. It's also the squirrel. They run the birthright citizenship out. Everybody chases after that. They forget about the other executive orders, and they all go relatively unchallenged because this birthright citizenship thing can't stand. It's clearly unconstitutional. And he says, oh, we're the only nation who does it. Again, Anna showed that it's not true, but I love that we do it. I love that we started that idea, and that if you're an American, it doesn't have anything to do with race or religion or ethnicity. It's the people who are born here. We're all Americans, no matter where we come from. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's something that we should be proud of. By the way, his position on this is deeply, deeply unpopular. So this is another one of those things that if he actually tries to do it, will drive his numbers into the ground, right? So look, I don't know why he chooses to do these deeply unpopular things when he generally likes to be popular. Maybe it's out of vengeance and that's just genuinely who he is. Maybe he thinks his base wants it. But in this case, with birthright citizenship, this has almost no chance of going into effect. It's wildly unconstitutional and totally ridiculous.
So the order will take effect in 30 days. I do think it's unconstitutional. We'll see how it plays out in the courts. The ACLU has already taken up this issue and has filed a lawsuit against this executive order in particular. Now, Trump also ended all categorical parole programs that under President Joe Biden allowed 30,000 migrants per month to enter the country via US airports, bypassing the border for applicants from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua. So that was, again, another executive order pertaining to immigration that Donald Trump signed on his very first day. Additional orders directed officials to restart the Remain in Mexico policy, which was implemented during Trump's first term. I actually think that was a good policy, one of his better immigration-related policies, and I wasn't the only one. Biden, who for whatever reason overturned it as soon as he went into the White House, realized he made a mistake and tried to re-implement it, but at that point, Mexico had moved on and did not want to re-implement it. Also, Trump is issuing a pause on the refugee admissions that will be in place for 4 months until they can figure out what the hell is going on. So no asylum seekers for 4 months. That was another executive order. Among those seeking lawful entry under Biden are the roughly 1,450 people per day who have been using the CBP One mobile app to schedule an appointment to make a humanitarian claim for asylum. And Trump has now ended that program. That app is now defunct. The US government will no longer be using it. The Washington Post says that now there is a notice posted to the agency's website that says future appointments have been canceled. And the cancellations will affect about 30,000 people, according to two Border Patrol agents who spoke to the Washington Post on condition of anonymity. 2,000 of them, by the way, are Afghani individuals who helped US soldiers in the fight in Afghanistan, in the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so I get Remain in Mexico. I think it probably makes sense, and I certainly understand after the election why they would do that, and some of the other laws that were mentioned. But the denying the asylum seekers is illegal according to international law. I know no one in America cares about international law anymore, but we do, and it's problematic. You had a good system for them applying instead of just running across the border, and you got rid of it. So now it's going to be a bigger mess. How does that help solve anything? It's just being spiteful for the sake of being spiteful. So look, guys, we have to be principled on all of this stuff. So for example, his TikTok executive order. I hate that they banned TikTok. I can't stand it. I think it's one of the worst laws that have been passed. But you can't just say, oh, I'm just not implementing it for 75 days. That was one of his executive orders. That's not a thing. So if they have an available buyer, he can extend it by 90 days, but they don't have an available buyer. So he's just going outside the law. So I can't stand any executive order that goes outside the law or outside the Constitution, even if I agree with the substance as I do on the TikTok one, right? So, and then some of the executive orders on LGBTQ stuff were terrible. He's questioning the Bostock decision, which prevented discrimination against transgender people and based on any gender identity, including the whole entire LGBTQ community, on employment discrimination. And he might be saying, hey, I don't want it extended to schools, so you are allowed to discriminate in schools, which is already terrible. But if he then questions whether you can discriminate at employment, we're affecting core constitutional rights here, and it's terrible. So, and by the way, as always, when he overreaches, it will be unpopular. It's one thing when you say, hey, we want to get rid of convicted felons. We want to, have people remain in Mexico, whatever. These things that we are already polled and shown to be popular, whether we agree or disagree with them. But when he goes into these absolute extremes and does illegal, unconstitutional things, people are not going to be in favor. Last thing I have on this is that Box, one of our members, wrote in on Super Chat, and he said, I'm no Trump fan, but him doing an hour-long off-the-cuff press section while getting his voters' business done on day one was super cathartic for me. And that's such an interesting point, and that's why I read it. Because Anna, in the midst of discussing all of the policy, and they're so thick with policy on day one with all these executive orders, we shouldn't overlook the optics of it. So,
oh my God, I'm not overlooking it at all.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I know the left thinks that I'm like MAGA. Some members of the right think I'm MAGA. I'm not MAGA, but I will admit this. I am super envious that MAGA has Donald Trump actually doing what he says that he was gonna do when he was campaigning. I don't agree with some of the stuff that he said he was gonna do when he was campaigning. With Democrats, we don't have any of that. Okay, we don't have anyone even giving the appearance of giving a damn about the base or the voters. All we've been getting from Democrats is this sense of entitlement. Like we're supposed to be their public servants and get them elected.
Yeah, and so look, we know and we covered every day on the show that Donald Trump does some of the things that he promised MAGA, and then he does things he didn't promise MAGA, okay? And he violates a lot of his promises, tons and tons of his promises, and we covered on the show. But the point is that he appears to be acting on their behalf with great vigor, right? And on the Democratic side, when we look for defenders and we look for somebody who's fighting for us to get things done, pass policy issues, whether it's through bills or executive order, what I'm about to say is true the minute I say it. What do they tell you all the time on the left? They say, well, you have to push your politicians into doing them. Why? We voted for them. Why don't they just do the thing that they said they were gonna do? Why do I have to keep pushing them afterwards? And when I do, by the way, they go, how dare you push a Democrat? How dare you, you're helping Trump and the Republicans. No, I would love for a Democrat to show this kind of enthusiasm for delivering on campaign promises, even though, as we just explained in painstaking detail, all the ones we massively disagree on. As a matter of optics, it's great politics to do that, and the Democrats never do it. They never do it. They say, you have to push us, and you're not allowed to push us. Just shut up and vote for us. And I can't stand it anymore.
They're immovable, okay? There is no pushing them, okay? Because they'd like you to believe they're different from Republicans as it pertains to corporate influence and corruption, but they're not. They're just as bad, and they're always gonna look out for their donors before they look out for their own base. And if you critique them a little bit, they've got an entire mob online, an entire army of people who come after you and blame you for Donald Trump's election. No, the Democratic candidates, the Democrats themselves, the mainstream Democratic Party, they helped Trump get elected. And it's time that they're held responsible for that.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.